This is episode number 414 of the Health and Fitness Podcast by InnerFight, brought to you in association with our friends at Smith Street Keller, who are still giving you away a nice goodie bag full of treats if you rate and review our podcast over in iTunes. This week's show is InnerTalks number 15, a great chat, a great InnerTalks that we had here at InnerFight last Thursday. If you missed out, we are bringing it to you in this podcast. I really hope you guys enjoyed it as much as everyone who came here enjoyed it and as much as I enjoyed it. Here is Sarah Usher in InnerTalks 15.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our guest today, Sarah Usher.
Am I on? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for agreeing to tell your story. Actually, it's quite amazing where these stories come from. Sarah was with us on the retreat that we organised earlier in the year, and she started telling us a little bit about this race just completely spontaneously, and we're all just like this for about 20 minutes. So it's absolutely awesome to have you here to talk about it.
Thank you very much.
When did you first hear about this race?
I've known about it for a long time because I did some sail training when I was 16. I sailed around the top of Scotland. I sailed from Aberdeen up to the Shetlands around into Greenock because my dad used to sail. And I'd always known about it because my godfather was a big sailor, did the tall ships race over in Australia. It's the first time my mum and dad went away without us. And so sailing's always been of interest. I've known about it for a long time.
It's the biggest... It's one of the most dangerous races there is. Give us a little bit more of a background. What is the entirety of this race?
So it's an 8, they call it legs, so it's a round the world boat race. It's about 40,000 nautical miles, and it's split into 8 legs. And you have 2 sets of people. You have worlders, and then you have leggers. So worlders who go all the way around, and leggers, which is what I did when you do certain sections. It's 12 yachts, all exactly the same spec. All exactly the same build, and with crews of up to 22. But the crew sizes do vary, which is what gets interesting during the race, because people do drop out, especially welders. I think it's 25% of the welders drop out.
Wow.
Yeah, because you don't realise quite how emotionally and physically tough it's going to be. And yeah, so every leg is broken into different sets of races, and it's all about points, it's all about stealth mode.
At the end of the day, it's a race.
Yeah, 100%.
And someone wins.
100%, yeah.
And your boat was very competitive. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, massively competitive. Our skipper was hugely competitive. And we weren't well liked because we were GB, so we got a lot of press attention. Right. So there's a lot of inter-boat rivalry. Right. Henry Lloyd were amazing. It's all about the weather, and it's all about reading weather more than anything. And once you start, depending on how the start works, you don't see any boats for ages, so it's all about the tactics of where the other boats are. And are you going to go for a scoring gate? Because the scoring gates, if you go around a certain gate, then you'll get more points. But then it's not a straight line start to finish. So and where is everybody else, and who's in stealth mode, and what's going to happen with the weather? And but Simon pushed us really hard. We were a racing boat.
The race is 40,000 nautical miles, which, because I googled it last night, is 1.8 kilometers is 1 mile, so it's a lot more than a kilometer. You sailed 13,000 nautical miles, 23,400 kilometers. How did you decide what you would do and which legs you would do?
This is possibly one of the weakest decisions I would say. I did it round work. I based it on when it was best for work for me to take time off. Right. So I asked my boss. Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because at the time you were in a full-time job.
Yes.
And when we look at adventure and the definition that I called out before, I think a lot of people think about it, and it's obvious that you were probably thinking about this from your sailing days. How long did you think about it, and what was the process that you managed through your job?
I actually, with my job, we got a contract on the Olympics, so London 2012. And essentially when we won the contract, we had to do a massive amount of hours in a very, very short amount of time. And when I came to the end of that and everything was a great success, I knew that I needed a different kind of adventure. I'd had a desk adventure. I'd had a Olympic adventure, and I needed something that wasn't based on spreadsheets and budgets and making sure that everything happened on time in a work scenario. So I simply said to my boss, please can I have a sabbatical? I need to have an adventure.
Sarah, most people have an adventure, a week holiday, they go to the Alps, they do something. You've taken a sabbatical and adventure to sail around the world. How was that received by your boss?
I think I needed something that challenged me in a different way, as opposed to mentally. This was mental and physical, but in a very, very different way. Not about longevity of how long you could stay awake at your desk and make sure you're still delivering. This was about a different kind of physicality, and I think for me it was just a time to be able to step out of, if you like, real life, and everyone does it for different reasons, and just reassess.
What was the lead up to the point where you actually went and told your boss that you were going to take this sabbatical and that you were going to do this race?
It was a series, you have to interview. So you interview to become a crew member, and then when you do your training, you either pass or you don't pass. So the process is, I knew that process was going to take place. So when I asked my boss, I'd done my research. I'd actually done all my stats on how many hours I'd done in the last 11 months, and he didn't want to see it. I asked him if he wanted to see it. I was like, do you want my timesheet? And he's like, nope. No, thank you. You can go away and do it. And my process was very much of, I didn't want to just go travelling. I knew that wasn't for me. I didn't want to live out of a backpack. Although I've never done that, it was just I wanted to achieve something.
Yeah. When you were signing up for it, talk us through, and when you were going through that process, were you nervous? Was it excitement? Because I think this is maybe what a lot of people go through. They plan, and then they maybe don't do what was first in their mind.
Oh, I'm incredibly nervous. The first stage is an interview. So they meet you and you go onto the boat, and all I could do was smile because it reminded me of when I was 16 and I'd been on the sail training vessel. And then when you do your first week's training, so you get through the interview, they say, yes, we think you could be a good crew member. You have to do your first week's training. And I was vomited for 7 days solid. Just was sick for 7 days solid. And there was only, I think, 7 of us on that training, and we're sailing on the 65, so the one before this, the boats that were used in the race before this. And I came back and I was knackered, you'd taken a holiday week, 7 days, vomiting, knackered, great, brilliant, I'm in.
And you still wanted to do it?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I think, again, challenge, and it was an adventure, and it was a bit scary, and you've got to do things that take you out of your comfort zone, stretch goals. Yeah, so.
Let's hop onto the boat, 70 foot long, a crew of over 20 people. How did that all come together? Did you know any of the people that you were going with? Was it all completely random? Talk to us about the boat.
Lots of people you get to meet on your training weeks, so you select your training weeks, and some of the guys had all trained together. I hadn't done much, and I hadn't actually done much team building in the lead up to it. Simply time. So when I got to Australia, I knew one person on my boat, Sue. I don't know if you we were on the grinder when on the video. So yes, I knew one person. It was my birthday, but my mum had taken over and said, Sarah, I know you don't like Stalker Book, but all your crew are in this bar having this meal. Please go. When I got to Australia, I was like, all right, cheers, Mum, and went down and met everybody.
So you started out in Australia.
Yes.
Talk us through the legs that you did and the races that you did.
So I started in Albany and I sailed into Sydney, then Sydney to Hobart, in the actual Sydney to Hobart race, which was incredible. And then Hobart to Brisbane, Brisbane to Qingdao, Brisbane to Singapore, Singapore to Qingdao. But we had a emergency stop in Hong Kong because some of the other boats, there was something that was breaking on each of the boats, but because we crashed out of Albany, we knew that we were fine, so we got bacon sandwiches instead. I jumped off a boat and got bacon sandwiches for everyone.
The longest of those legs was 32 days, and the shortest was 4. What was it like? Was it intense for those 4 days, and what's the difference? Because, one of the legs was 11 days, so you did a lot of different times at sea. What was it like?
The 4 days was really intense, because if I remember correctly, the 4 days was to Sydney to Hobart. So we were pushing really, really hard because we were part of this international race as well. And as I said, my skipper what was a win. We had a separate. They did things. We did something that was quite unusual. We have watches, so 2-watch system, and on the Sydney to Hobart we actually changed it so the helm was on a different system. So we had the best helms at all time on the helm, which is where you can stay to course. So the rest of us in the watches, we were operating as normal, whereas the helms were operating differently, and that threw us out quite a lot. So that 4 days was pretty intense, but you're mixing up the teams. Whereas the 32 days was incredibly intense for a plethora of a million different reasons.
Let's jump back into how you actually crewed this boat. You have a shift system. Talk to us about that.
So the way it works is you have two watches, and that's so you can race the whole time, and also so you can share bunks. You're not sharing a bunk, you're sharing a bunk when they're on deck and you're in bed. So you actually have no space of your own at all, ever. And that's not allowed on the boat. That's strictly not allowed, sharing bunks. Causes all kinds of other issues. But the way it operates is that you have a watch and you have a watch leader, and essentially, and 2 people out of each watch are mother, which is where they do all the cooking, do all the cleaning. And the good thing about being mother is you get a full night's sleep, and you get to have a shower at the end of the day, which is nice. So essentially your teammates you don't actually see. So we worked in a 6-6-4-4-4. So 6 on, 6 off, 4 on, 4 off, 4 on, 6 on, 6 off, unless it was all hands.
How does that play with your mind, with your body, with everything? Because it's very easy to say, yeah, we work 6 hours, we rested 6 hours, then 4, but it must be mayhem.
Yeah, it is, and it's physically exhausting, and in terms of the hours that you're on, depending on the weather, you can have a 6-hour shift where you actually have to do stuff to keep yourself entertained, right, because you're on a sail plan, the weather's not changing. So what do you do for 6 hours? You clean, you make sure everything's working correctly. You do a lot of maintenance in those times.
Yeah.
But there's other watches where, we did a 4-hour watch one time. We called it the watch of the sail changes because there was only actually 5 of us. And we had to I think we did 4 sail changes in 4 hours. And I know that might not sound a lot, but these sails are huge, huge. And every time you take one down, you hank one on, get it up, you have to stow the other, you get it below deck, you get it out again. And this is just through minor changes in the wind. But because we were racing, you had to have the right sail plan up the whole time. So, so it's tough.
We've got a couple of nice pictures of you working on the boat. Talk us through... They're kind of clear. Talk us through what's going on here.
This one, I think, and this outfit was my pants and bra, which I wore for, I think, 7 days non-stop. And I'm in the bilges because we had an oil leak. So I had to clear out here. This is the bilges. This is in where we put all the rubbish. So when you're on watch, you have an engineer, and an engineer does a lot of the cleaning as well. And you've got to make sure that the boat's running properly. So this was when we were going across from Brisbane to Singapore, so it was super hot, getting really, really hot. Hot.
How did it go? You're obviously doing a great job here.
Trying.
Everyone's relying on you to make sure it's clean and everything's in place. Talk to us a little bit about that teamwork aspect, because someone's resting for 6 hours, you're expecting to work. Was there times where the work wasn't done when you were asleep? Talk us through some of those times.
Yeah, we had it's very much teamwork, and you're very much reliant on everybody doing what they need to do. And one of the guys, my watch leader, Steve, on a section of the race, he was an incredible engineer. He's actually an engineer in real life. And when people there's rules that you have to live by. Sorry, I'm going to get a tiny bit graphic. You don't put toilet paper, like in lots of the toilets in Dubai, you don't put toilet paper in the heads. You just don't do it because the pipes are not big enough and you have to pump it out into the sea. So you put anything in the heads, the man has to take the pipes out. And there's only a certain amount of pipe when it gets blocked that he can cut off. So we had to have a boat meeting about people putting stuff in the heads and not pumping enough times. So it's if you go a certain way, it's 20. If you do something else, it's 40 to 80, depending. guys, this is what you have to do to keep this boat running. And it's so reliant on everybody. If you don't check the engine, if you don't check the water maker, I mean, the water maker broke. Like, we were on water rations at 32 degrees racing, and you're only allowed 500 mils of water a day. Like, if things go wrong, things go wrong.
Talk to us about some of the fights you had with some of your teammates.
Fights were a lot over food. Food becomes very, very important. Cups of tea, also very important. I mean, we laugh about it, but there was one guy, and bless him, he got the fear, and the fear can take over. Like, you're in seas, and you don't get to control anything. So, and lots of people who've done coastal racing, it's a bit different, because like you've got this constant coast next to you, and you get to know that you're going home. When you're ocean racing, you don't see anyone or anything. And there was one day, and he'd got the fear, and bless him, he went downstairs and made himself a cup of tea, and he didn't offer to make anyone else a cup of tea.
Oh dear.
Right, now that, I know it sounds ridiculous, but the effort it takes to boil water when you're at this angle and then get it all ready, you do it for your teammates, like, because they're up there sailing the boat. If you're down below deck, they're sailing, so why haven't you offered? And the argument that cut, I was like, oh, I'm just going to take a step back, everybody needs to chill. Like, it's tea. But it wasn't. It was about team ethos. It wasn't about tea, it was about team.
When you're on the boat, it's very intense with those 20 people.
Yeah.
What communication did you have with the outside world?
Very little. We had one crew laptop. Everyone got a crew laptop, each boat, I mean. And you had to buy, before you went on the boat, you had to buy an email address so you could email from the boat. And then you had limited time on the laptop. So you could only do it when you were off watch. So that was your time sleeping, so you make a choice. You sleep or you email your mum. You make a choice.
Let's go to one of the emails that you sent to your mum, and I'll read a little bit out of it. In terms of life on board, I'll run through the list of all the things that have gone wrong so far. Broken water maker, dodgy rudders, snapped reef 2 line, damaged reef 3 line, getting caught on a fishing line, a knockdown due to a baby tornado, massive squall fields, the likes of which Simon has never seen, numerous broaches, a crew member falling off the bowsprit mid-mending operation, outbreak of vicious saltwater boil infections, everyone is getting them, a serious case of crew D&V due to all the infections, sickness and lack of showers. We are now running out of antibacterial hand sanitizer and surface spray. We literally have 3 bottles of hand sanitizer left and 2 antibacterial sprays. Were you trying to give your mum a heart attack?
What I realised afterwards is that me sending emails to my mum wasn't a good idea.
That's what I thought.
My dad did tell me off. He was like, Sarah, can you stop telling her what's happening at sea? She doesn't need to know this stuff. It's giving her illness. Yeah, no, we're having a particularly bad time, that race.
I mean, lots went wrong.
Yes.
Talk us through, like, what do you do? You're in the middle of the ocean. Like you say, when you're sailing along the coast, you can probably see the coast, and that's quite comforting. But you're in the ocean, probably big oceans as well. Lots went wrong. How do you manage that?
There's some rules that become involved. When your water maker breaks, obviously, that's risks to life because you can't drink. So if Steve, who I referred to earlier on, hadn't been able to fix it, we would have had to drop out of the race, go to another boat, because one of the boats in the fleet always carries an extra water maker. Now, that's a disadvantage to them because it's heavier. So obviously, all the decisions you make about what you have on your boat, Marcus are like this. We, you know how you only ever let Holly take hand luggage onto an aeroplane?
She doesn't do that.
Well, we were only allowed a certain amount of weight baggage. So I think we're only allowed 20 kg, and that's all your boots, your sleeping bag, everything. So the boat that carries the extra water maker, they're at a disadvantage. So Steve was under a huge amount of pressure to get that fixed. Because we didn't have any water, even the rationed amount of showers you're allowed to have when you're a mum, you weren't allowed. So everyone, you're getting covered in salt water all the time because you're getting splashed the whole time. The only time you actually get to shower is when there's rain, and we all run up on deck with our shampoo, and you should have seen us all like literally showering in the rain, just don't stop raining, I've only got my conditioner on. And And that led to the infections, led to the DMV. When you're not eating properly, when you're not washing properly, when you can't clean properly, and you're in a 70-foot yacht and you're all sharing bunks, and you get poorly. And that's
so how
it.
do you manage it? Did you run out of hand sanitizer and antibacterial?
No, Steve was amazing. We ran out of antibacterial. We didn't run out of hand sanitizer, but Steve managed to get the water maker working, which allowed us to start rehydrating properly, and also allowed us to start cleaning the dishes properly, cleaning the heads properly. So what we actually did on the boat, there's 2 heads. We separated the heads, which meant that anyone who had DMV could use one, and anyone who was well use the other. And so you segregate the boat. You put people in different places to make sure you try and limit the infection. One of my friends, she actually wasn't allowed above, onto deck for 7 days because her boils were so bad. You have a dedicated medic on each boat. They might have just done a first aid course. But luckily we had a nurse who'd actually worked in Afghanistan. She was amazing. And she was lancing, this is pretty horrible and graphic. She was lancing boils while at sea. So like if you imagine on a boat, like this is what the boat, unless you've got a nice bit of weather, and she's lancing boils below deck. And like these things were, I didn't get any, thank God. But like it was bad, yeah.
Talk about the weather at sea. It was often quite bad, and it led to quite a serious situation for you guys. If we show the video, just try and focus a little bit on the horizon here. There's not supposed to be sound, it's okay.
So we're going into a squall. So what's happening now is we're trying to put a reef in to reduce our sail plan because we can see a big squall in front of us. That's Squirrel's arm next to me. The guys in the pit are trying to sort out the lines, so when we reduce the sail plan, it's all tight so we can keep racing. If you watch the horizon, that's the angle that we're racing on. We've just been hit by the tornado. We're now over in the water. The whole mast is now in the water. The keel is righting the boat. I've gone through the guardrails and I'm now see the light? That's me in the ocean, and my friend is trying to drag me back onto the boat. She'll right herself in a second. I'm in. And she's righting herself now. So you can see, so we essentially went from an angle like this where we were racing. We got hit by the squall. We went over. The mast went into the water. I went through the guardrails. I did something wrong. At all times when you're on these boats, you're supposed to be clipped on. You have a harness. And it's essentially got a short leash, if you like, and a long leash. So you can move around the boat. And there's things, if you imagine like these wires, there's things that you basically can walk around the boat and you're attached. Because I'm a midget, for the job that I was doing, I was attached to this one and I needed to reach the mast and I couldn't do it. So I unattached myself, ready to clip on, so I could do my job. And at that point we got hit. So all I was screaming at Squirrel was, "I'm not clipped on!" And he just went to grab me. And because we have a harness on our chest, and because he was clipped on, he could only have a certain amount of reach. And he was just like, all I could see was you go backwards. And I'm like, yeah, it was, yeah.
What was going through your mind?
I'm not clipped on. I'm not clipped on. That's all I kept screaming. Because if you're clipped on, when she rights herself, you'll stay attached to the boat. Anyone will tell you that your biggest lifesaver is your boat. Don't abandon your boat unless you really have to. Don't ever abandon your boat, because that's what they'll see from the air. That's what they'll. If anything goes wrong, that's what they'll find. And I just knew. I knew I wasn't clipped on. I knew I wasn't clipped on.
So you're sort of a little bit in the ocean. The boat's on its side.
Yeah.
What's going on in your mind?
Essentially, you have to trust that the weight. What happens on a knockdown is, unless the mast has gone so far under that the weight of the water has gone into the sail and it doesn't compensate by the weight of the keel, she should right herself. She should right herself. And because it was quite a quick one, I was like, okay, this is going to be all right. And you're just going through your mind as soon as I was trying to make sure that I could feel the side of the boat and hang on to a winch, because if I was hanging on to something, as long as I was hanging on to the boat, I was in contact with a boat. I'm not in the ocean by myself. I'm on the boat. I've got the boat. So it was just hang on to it.
I would imagine before you went, you probably spoke with your family about worst case scenarios. Was this it?
Do you know what? It's funny. I didn't speak about worst case scenarios. I think if I had spoken about worst case scenarios, my mum 100% would never have let me get on this boat. My dad would be like, yeah, crack on, have fun, send us an email. But I actually don't think you allow yourself when you're on land to think about that, even in between races.
What did you feel after it happened?
Well, when it happened, immediately we started racing again. It was like, get the sails back up. And I was like, I'll go to the foredeck. And Skipper went, not you get below deck. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. And he was like, I was like ready to help again. But because my life jacket had inflated, I needed to go below deck. And it's only then, and you must know, it's only when I went below deck, that's when your hands start shaking. When you've got something to do, you've got something to concentrate on. But I went below deck, and that's when my hands started shaking.
How far away from your next stop were you?
Do you know what? I can't remember. I really can't remember. We're in the middle of an ocean. I just remember afterwards Steve coming up to me, who was my watch leader at the time, because I spent a little bit of time below deck, had a hot chocolate, and then went back up onto deck and sat in the pit, and just needed to be on deck again just to be on deck. Because if you stay below too long, you'll get the fear, and then it's hard to get up the stairs. So I sat in the pit, and Steve, he literally went, get on the ground, a midget, because they call me midget, and I was like, okay. And he just put his forehead to my forehead, and he was just like, I watched the video, I would have got you. I was like, I know. And he's like, I would have come and got you. I was like, I know. It's just moments like that, you're like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
Aside from something like that, was there times on the boat that you were genuinely scared? Share some of those with us.
I know it was only a short video, but there was at one point, I don't know if you saw, but there was essentially the boom was in the water, and you saw it bouncing in the water. You shouldn't race like that. There's that you're going to damage your boat, and we raced our boat hard. But if you damage your boat and cause damages that need repairs, you get deducted points. So it's a really fine line about how hard you push the boat, how much you wreck, because you'll lose points in the race. And obviously, because we're a competitive boat, we didn't want to damage anything. But yeah, there's moments where you're like, your guardrails are in the water, your guardrails are not supposed to be in the water, and you're living at an angle, and someone's screaming to get on the foredeck to trim the sails, and you've got water coming at you, and you literally have to have a word with yourself and go on, okay, come on, get out the pit. And I remember one time I was in the pit, and guardrails were in the water. It was actually Ollie was on their helm and racing hard. He's competitive. He's
slightly.
Yeah, and the helmsman, when they race hard, they race hard, and my watch leader came up on deck, and he literally looked at me, looked at the helm, and there's a lot of swearing on boats, but I'm going to try not to swear. There's a lot of swearing and a lot of shouting. And what are we racing like this for? Why are we sailing like that? And I was like, I don't know, I'm just really scared. Because it's scary. It's like, you take a fall, there was one time that the boat bounced, and I literally took a flyer, and I landed in the pit, but my head landed on the deck. So when you do it, when you go snowboarding and you do a head crack, and literally I took a flyer, head crack. Dale screamed, grab her, grabbed me into the pit. I was clipped on, so I was fine. But down below deck, someone just went, what was that? That just hit the deck, and it's like that was my skull. And it's like because it's you race hard, and it can be really, really scary.
On the flip side, I imagine it was absolutely incredible on a number of different occasions. Share some of those with us.
The atmosphere is insane fun when you're having fun. And there's lots of times we made videos all the giggles that you have and the laughs that you have, and you spend a lot of time with these people, so you get to know them really well. And the highs intensity of crossing that finish line when you're on the podium place, or you know that you just smashed a scoring gate, or you've just gone across the equator, and some of the natural things that you see, like Mother Nature's scary and she doesn't care that you're there. She doesn't know you're there and she doesn't care that you're there. But yet you get to see like these dolphins and playing with your boat in the phosphorescence. And in China, like there's these guys in we call them the teacups. Like they're literally sat in the middle of the sea in teacups fishing. And you're like, when would you ever see this stuff? Like, so the highs were, it's a total cliche, but the highs were incredible. Winning, racing, seeing land, seeing other boats. Like when you saw another boat, even though they're your competitor, it's so exciting. Like, oh my God, there's PSP. Like, and it's like everyone's waving at each other and you're like, oh, people. It's weird. So the camaraderie is amazing.
The overall in the event, your boat came second.
Yeah.
You obviously contributed a lot to that. Where did you place in the legs in the races that you were in?
Oh my God, I actually should have looked all of this up. Albany out, we didn't place anywhere because we crashed. Well done. That was when I got on the boat. That was fun. So there was an international sailing committee that deducted us points for that because you're not allowed to do stuff like that.
I was going to show that video, but...
No, you can if you want. It's like, oh, that's awkward. God, do you know what, Marcus? I can't remember. Like, first seconds. Sydney Hobart, we came second in our class, I think. When we got into Singapore, I think we came second. Yeah, I'm really sorry.
When you reached land, the longest leg was 32 days. You ended up in Singapore. What did it feel like to step off this boat and onto dry land?
They wouldn't let us off the boat because we'd gotten it. We actually had to sit next to the land. They gave us a keg of beer, which is the best thing to give us when we haven't drank for 32 days and been dehydrated for half of it, if not more. But they wouldn't let us off because of immigration.
Right.
But as soon as you get on land, I mean, it's incredible. But what we did as soon as we landed is we all drank. A lot. I don't remember Singapore very well. I remember standing in a shower for an hour. I stood in a shower for an hour.
You got back on the boat and you had another 19 days till the end. It must have been quite a surreal experience because the first few bits were quite short and then you did 32 days and then the last bit was going to be quite long. How did you feel going back on the boat for what was going to be a long stint?
I was really looking forward to it because I think when you get on land, Singapore was messy and I was, like I said, drunk a lot of it. I was looking forward to racing again. I'd gotten into that racing as far as safe as you can, as fast as you can. So I was looking forward to racing and seeing different places and getting across to China and knowing that was the end of my journey. It was exciting and sad at the same time, you know? Like, this is coming towards the end of your adventure.
What was it like at the end when you finished that last leg? You'd been away for the best part of 3 months. What was it like to say goodbye to all of these people? Oh,
that was horrible. I actually looked at whether I could stay and do the next leg. I wanted to. One thing I hadn't done is I hadn't actually crossed an ocean. I'd sailed in the oceans. I'd sailed in the southern, but I hadn't crossed an ocean. And I got off and in Qingdao, my mum and dad were there. And like in Qingdao, it's amazing. Like they have all these Chinese drummers when you get off the boat and it's incredible. And again, you drink beer at 9 o'clock in the morning. And but I actually asked, I said to my mum, I'm seriously thinking about staying on the boat. And she just looked at me and my dad was stood there with his arms folded. Yeah, knew she would. And then it was just one of those ones, life took over. It's like, but you've got a job to come back to and you made this commitment to this amount of time. It was incredibly hard to say bye to these people.
Was it as hard as it was coming back into the real world and going back to work?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, not good. not easy. But you come back, and I've said this to Marcus before, there's a simplicity about sailing, especially when you're racing. A to B, as fast as you can, as safe as you can. And bills go to the wayside. You worry about your food and you worry about your showers, but everything else disappears. Like, there's nothing else to worry about. As fast as you can, as safe as you can, with the people that you're with. And then you come back into the real world, and I went straight back to work, and everyone's super happy to see you, and that's amazing. Like, my girl's like, oh, you're back. And then you hear someone shouting at someone about not having laminated the maps for the event on the weekend, and you're like, that's seriously not something to get stressed out about. Leave them alone. And it's about perspective, and because you've been in like a pretty stressful situation, and decision making is super serious, and it's something that you proved to us on the retreat, that like when you're under stressful conditions, you make different decisions, and lots of the time you actually just need to take a step back and go, no, we shouldn't change that sail now. Give it 3 minutes. If the wind is still doing it, etc. And then you come back into life and you're like, okay, I need to deal with the tube. I need to deal with people. Okay, I'm going to have to readjust to this.
How long did it take to get back into life? And because the maps had to be laminated, so you sort of have to start adjusting again. How long did that take?
I would say for me, it took a good 2-3 months to not every morning waking up wishing I was on the boat. Because they're still out there racing. They're still out there, like, smashing it and racing across an ocean and not having to deal with tube and work and everything. So you get a look, and you watch them because you can track them and you see how they're doing, and you know what they're feeling. Like, when they got into San Francisco, you're like, oh my God, you just did it again, guys. You just sailed under, like, the Golden Gate Bridge. That's amazing. Like, so it took a while. Took a while to readjust.
What you've done is phenomenal. Congratulations from me. I think people probably have some questions, so we'll open up to the floor for the next 10 or 15 minutes. If people want to ask questions, there's mics. Stick your hand up. Yes.
Thanks, Jules.
Well done, by the way. Amazing. I have a question. You talked about this fear, like the fear taking over. How, when you're in a situation where you can't go to land, how do people get over that? Like,
am I still on?
did I cut you dead?
Hello. No, it's all right. It's interesting. A lot of it's about talking and communication and like coaxing. Some of it's literally just about getting up those stairs. Like, because when you're below deck, although you're still living at an angle, you're protected from the water. You're protected from the fear of like the overboard, if you like. So sometimes it's understanding that if you're clipped on, your crew have got you. We've got you. And it's knowing that someone, whether it's the 10 people that you're currently on deck with, have got they know they've got the hand in the back, if that makes sense. We've got you. You'll be okay. Do this job. Focus on this job. Look at this grinder. That's all you have to look at. You don't have to go to the front. Do you know what I mean? Like, or because the bow's the scary, scary place. And one of my mates, I actually said to her at once, please don't ever go up there. Because she's like Bambi, and she scared me. Like, I'm like, please don't go up there again. But yeah, getting over the fear is about communication and ensuring that you're focusing on one thing and you're telling your teammates you've got them. You've got to know that your teammates have got you.
Someone else want to ask a question?
Hey, great, really. So I understood from what you said, but what changed in your life now, and what's next? Is it addictive?
Well, it is addictive, and actually, this gave me the opportunity to move to Dubai. So when I came back, what Marcus is asking, like, I went back into my life and went back to my job, and they tried, like, they were like, we've got this project, and I'm like, oh, okay, got this project, all right. And then they were like, well, we've got this project that we need somebody to go somewhere else and do something by themselves and stand alone, and it actually gave me the opportunity to to come over here and have an adventure in a different place. My adventures haven't been like this since then. But what next? I keep challenging myself physically. I was petrified about coming here. I think it was Jess and Fraser that kept saying, you have to come, Anton, you have to come. But in terms of next big adventures, the Heidis have inspired me to try and do an ultramarathon of some form. So that's probably going to be my next adventure. But yeah, it inspires you in different ways.
Sarah, thank you. That was so interesting. I'm a big sailor, so I'm sort of like, I'm wet and I've got salt all over me. I've got about 20 questions, but I'll cut it to 2. Are you racing here? Do you race in the local waters?
Actually, that's one of my biggest regrets, is since I came here, I haven't been to Dosk in terms of sailing. I know I've been there to watch the rugby with mates, but I haven't actually been to Dosk sailing. So that's something that I definitely want to do.
We'll swap numbers.
I would really love that. I think it's one of those ones, because I didn't do a lot of sailing before I went. Like, I did the bit when I was 16. Like, I don't want to exaggerate my sailing experience, and I think that's something to really understand about the Clipper race. Most people who go on this have literally done their 4 weeks training. Like, that's it. They're not all sailors. Do you know what I mean? That's not the background. So smaller boat sailing, actually, I'd really like to get into, because you just get told what to do a lot here. Like, do you know what I mean?
And so with your training, were you taught to do everything from navigating to tactical to helms to, could you fill in anybody's position on the boat?
Yes and no. Like, we're all given time on the helm. I liked being on the helm when we weren't racing, only because Skipper had a little hatch that every time you went off by a couple of degrees, what are you doing? In terms of navigating, we all had times where we had to go and check the routes, but he would pick the route. So the skipper, in terms of the tactical on this, he was very much in charge of where we went, looking at the weather, but we all had those jobs. You were supposed to have a certain amount of skill set, but obviously there are people that are better at things than others.
Well done. Absolutely
Thanks.
Brilliant.
I don't want to over-exaggerate my sailing skill, though. Like, I don't want you to think I'm
it's
some
like
sort
an
of...
interview. You've passed. Don't worry.
No, I'm not. Like, but that's... a lot of it's about shouting and telling other people what to do and what sheets to pull on.
Any other questions? Tufik.
I would like to do some more sailing.
So I have 2 questions. The first one related to fear and trust. What is it to trust people, and what is it to not trust people? Because this is a big thing in teamwork. So that's the word.
Okay, to trust people, you have to trust your helm. Because, say, for example, if you're doing a sail change and you're at the front of the boat and you're getting hammered, you have to know that they've got your back, in that they know where to put the boat in the wind in order to make your job possible. I don't know if you remember, on one of the videos, you'll see everyone sat at the front and they're like dragging a sail down. So you have to trust that, one, the decisions are being made correctly about the sail changes, because it's exhausting, like doing sail changes. And 2, the helm's going to put you in the right position. But 3, you just got to trust your teammates that when something goes wrong, they're going to be there. And I trusted my teammates implicitly after about 10 minutes, because you have to, because you can't sail these big boats by yourself. Like, there is no one-man job apart from cleaning the heads. Like, there is no one-man job, everything's too heavy. It's too heavy. And sometimes you have to accept when you're little that you're little and you can't reach certain things, and the big burly blokes, like, will shove you out the way at some point, and you can get all, I can help. Like, you can help, but you just can't help on that bit. So you have to trust, especially when you're really, really racing. And what not to trust, that's when it makes it really hard, when you have a break. So the guy that I spoke about who got the fear, that became really hard for the team, and he actually got off the boat. The reason being is he was so scared he couldn't contribute at all, and then that causes bad feeling, and when you're living in on a 70-foot yacht, if you haven't got that trust, it doesn't work. So yeah, bless him, he got off.
Okay, the second question is logistics. I mean, for something like this, you have to prepare a lot, and the micromanaging of the little thing, it becomes kind of obsessive. So how did you manage that?
I had all my dry bags, different colours. So pants, shorts, jumpers, leggings, because when you're in the dark, you can't see anything anyway. And what I learned very quickly is actually you pull out for a week, so then you have your weekday bag, which has basically got maybe 2 changes in, because you don't get changed very often. And you manage your own system, because you haven't got access to stuff. In terms of logistics for the boat in general, a really interesting question. A lot of it's about the food, like I've said, and you victual. So you plan. So one of the things that you do when you get to land is there's a victualler, and they plan what the food is. So you know what the rotation of the food is, and you have a big day bag of all the food for that day, and then you have a meal plan. So it's actually quite precise. The issue is when you're at sea for longer than you're supposed to be at sea, you then go into emergency rations, which is what we ended up doing on our 32-day stint. And if someone doesn't like the food, or if someone's got different food tastes, entirely honest, no one was interested if you were gluten-free or etc., etc. It's like, you need calories, you need to eat. Vegetarianism, absolutely, was respected. But we chose as a boat, actually, which was quite interesting, to have freezers. So we had meat on, I don't eat red meat, but we had freezers on. And the good thing about that is Ollie used to hide cans of Coke. So when Ollie and I did Mother together, we had a treat at the end of the night. We had a can of Coke, and a cold can of Coke was like the dream. Like when you need it, it was just amazing. So logistics was tough. And halfway through, we all got weighed again, so all of our stuff got weighed. Because if you imagine you go on holiday and you pick up a T-shirt, or you pick up an extra pair of flip-flops, or you imagine the welders are doing that every port they go into. You pick up a cap, or you pick up a jumper, and suddenly 20 kg goes to 25 to 30, and suddenly the boat's really, really heavy. So we had a re-weigh in. That didn't go down well. So logistics was really important.
Any other questions? Martin.
Great, super, Sarah. I didn't quite catch where your incident happened when you went overboard.
It was when I was between Brisbane and Singapore. So it was hot. So it was really hot, and it's when we were going into a squall field, and the squall just turned into a baby tornado, like just a little water spout, and just there in the middle of the ocean.
And how was the Southern Ocean from Albany, Perth way?
I wasn't a big fan. The Southern Ocean is amazing, apart from when you realise that you're not supposed to be there. Like it's not somewhere that I didn't do the big one that the guys did when they came across from South Africa to Albany, and I got on, and I expected, and this is my naivety, you expect like team, like everyone's going to want to. They've just sailed across the Southern Ocean. They've just gone through seas that I can't even imagine, and they don't want to be near any. They don't want to be near each other. Like they've just gone through something massive. So for them, going back into the Southern Ocean when we were racing was quite hard. For me, it took my breath away, because I'm like, you see the albatrosses. There's no ships. There's no nothing. There's no. Why are we here? You're not supposed to be here. And I remember saying that out loud once. We're not supposed to be here. This doesn't make any sense. So it was incredible. But the statistic side of me also made me think, well, I wish I'd done that leg. I wish I'd done all of it. I actually wish I'd done all of it. 20/20 hindsight. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done the whole thing. 100%.
And how big were the waves, the largest that you saw in any part of the race?
The largest ones that I saw, I can't give you it in footage because your memory gets skewed. But for me, when we had like a double-decker bus coming towards us, and I just had a bit of a moment, I just had to turn around. I was like, don't want to see that. Turn around. So for me, it felt like a double-decker bus. I can't tell you the heights of it. One thing I've learnt from when I talk to my boys, and everybody's memories of the same situations are slightly different. Do you know what I mean? For some people, that was one of the worst. One of my worst experiences was when this wave came over. We're at night, and two of my mates were on the foredeck. They were securing a sail, and suddenly there was only one of them left. And Jim was overboard on his tether. Now that wave felt huge, but I'm sure it actually wasn't. It was the fact that we were at an angle and they were at the lower side trying to secure a sail. That's why he went over. So I'm really sorry I can't give you accurate information. I can tell you what it felt like, but I can't tell you exactly how it was.
A double-decker bus. Two of them.
Double-decker bus. That was enough.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Sarah, I have one final question for you. I think you've probably provoked a lot of thought for people, and I think adventure is something that is in a lot of our DNA. What would be one of your parting pieces of advice for people that are thinking maybe this challenge, these two people here, or anyone thinking to embark on any adventure or challenge? What's your advice to those people?
Do it, because it will change you. For the better, and you'll learn stuff. Like you can't regret something you've done. You can only learn from it. So any adventure, just take the plunge, even if it doesn't seem possible at the time. Ask your boss for the time off. All they can do is say no, and if they say yes, then you've got to do it because you've already asked. So give it a go.
Awesome, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, Sarah Usher. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you for coming.